Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining Floridian Future. I'm excited to have you here today because we're going to kick off our Civics series. We're here helping everyday Floridians understand how our government really works and how you can make a difference in the legislative process. Joining me today is somebody who really knows what it means to serve the people, Dennis A. Ross. Dennis is a lifelong Floridian who's dedicated his career to public service and civic education. He served in both the Florida House of Representatives and the United States Congress, representing Florida's 15th district. Today, he's sharing that experience with the next generation as director of the American Center for Public Leadership at Southeastern University in Lakeland, where he's also a distinguished professor of political science. We are thrilled to have him here to help us unpack how our system works, why engagement matters, and how you can be part of shaping Florida's future. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And one of the things that we do here is we're really aimed at the grassroots and the people that truly don't understand how the system works. And for instance, a lot of people don't even understand what is civics, what is civics and why does it matter? If you could start us, do just a brief overview on that.
You got it. Civics is taking ownership of your citizenship. Yes, it's understanding your legislatures, your local governments, your federal governments, but really it comes down to understanding why we have the system of government that we have, which allows us to prosper and actually reach our individual potential. And it does so through this Constitution that is probably the most succinct and most complete governing document known to mankind. That throughout its history since 1789, it has been the guiding force that has gotten us through so many difficult situations. And in fact itself, it was not a perfect document when it was written. And in the preamble, it says, in order to make a more perfect union. We'll never be a perfect union, but its design was to make sure we have strive for a more perfect union by allowing the citizens to understand that they have certain rights and that those rights must be and will be protected by this Constitution. Absent knowing that, everybody else is just in a scattered world thinking that their idea is the best, but having no idea how to effectuate the change they want to see. Understanding civics is understanding the basis of our democracy, which is the Constitution.
Right. And the thing is also is a lot of people, it's like they have this idea, and I think politics has gotten so, I don't even know the right word to describe it, but it's almost like when you're voting for people, it's almost like people are voting more like they're voting for a popularity contest as opposed to somebody who's really truly going to represent them. I think in this day and age, there's a lot of taxation without representation, which we are guaranteed, again, in the Constitution, to have taxation with representation. So if we could, what I want to do is lay a firm foundation here, how the machinery of American self-government is designed to work, and then how it actually operates, and show people exactly where their voice fits into this process.
Yeah, on paper, it looks pretty simple. The Congress, or the legislative body, is the genesis of any new laws. They debate them back and two. It passes the House, it passes the Senate in the same form, it goes to the president, it's signed into law, and that becomes the way we do things. And in reality, that is true, but there are a lot of things that go along with that. Self-interest, constituent interest, what can I get for my friends? The definition of politics is the constant allocation and reallocation of wealth, deference, and power. It's not just making laws. And so when you have the power to make laws, there are things that you can barter for, things that you can exchange for. And that's what the process truly entails. While it looks pretty simple on paper, in practice, it is a very convoluted and complex process. But it was designed that way. Understand that our founders designed it that way to include a system of checks and balances, that no one body would be greater than the other, not the legislative, not the president, and not the Supreme Court. Furthermore, they designed it with that in mind because they knew the fallibility of man. They knew that man was susceptible to corruption and temptation. And therefore, that if they put in these checks and balances, it would cause government to be more deliberative. And it would take more time to make changes. If we just resolved ourselves to change the way we're going every 2 years or every year for that matter, we would never have certainty in our lives, and we would never be able to have the type of lifestyle that we should be entitled to do under the freedoms that the Constitution gives us.
I know. I think about that, and I think about with all the problems going on, truly, 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 if we, and I use the word loosely, if we simply went back to honoring the Constitution and our constitutional rights, we would be in a whole different world, because
Absolutely.
so many things that are happening out there are unconstitutional. And now there's also, and I'm going to kind of take a little side trip here, but now there's this whole thing about, oh, the Convention of the States, let's throw the Constitution, it's not working, and do this over here. I am of the belief that we have a Constitution. It is a great document. We need to honor it and stop shredding it.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. I attended a mock Constitution of the States a couple of years ago in Williamsburg, which was made up of former legislators and current legislators. And the thing that concerned me is that it was I would call it chaotic, but it would scare me to see us go into a Constitution of States without some serious direction and limited scope of what they were going to do. I could see them going into a Constitution of States for one specific purpose, and let's call it term limits. Let's just go in for term limits, and that way we can do this amendment, and we can change the Constitution that way. But to do it and open up the entire Constitution would wreak havoc on our system, and I don't think would result in any benefit to our citizenry.
I don't think it would either. Another thing that I don't believe people really understand, and I think this has been very deliberate, is to try to take the word republic out of our language and keep putting in democracy. We're a democracy. We're a democracy. We're a democracy. Yeah. We are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. So if you could explain to those that really, truly don't know and don't understand the difference between a democracy and a constitutional republic, that would be great.
And I appreciate you raising that distinction, because we have a democratic form of government. We are considered a democracy in that the people have their say, but they don't have their say directly on every issue. And that would wreak even greater havoc if we wanted the voting population, which unfortunately those that actually vote are declining in numbers, and not by attrition, but just because of disinterest and apathy. But if we had to do that on every issue, we would never get anything done. So our form of government is a representative form of government. It's a republic. And what we do is we elect people to represent our interests. And we have diverse interests amongst all of us. So they have to make the decision as what is in the best interest of the country and what is in the best interest of their constituency. And that way you streamline the process. You're able to bring the ideas and the issues together and be able to deliberate them and debate them amongst a smaller group of people that have been put there and entrusted with the confidence of doing the best thing for their constituency and their nation. We are a republic form of government, and that is the beauty of what we have. A true democracy would never have survived this long.
I had somebody explain it that a democracy is basically mob rule, and you don't want mob rule.
It would be, and it would change every day.
Yeah,
it would change every day. The majority rules, period, and you have no protection of the minority.
And that's the biggest thing there, and I don't think people understand that. That's why we need to keep, every time I hear somebody say we're a democracy, every single time I correct them, no, we're a constitutional republic, because I don't want the word democracy. People like, oh, well, we're a democracy, we're a democracy. And it's changing the language. If you change the language, you change the society. So
yes, yeah, you do.
That's my little thing.
But if we were teaching civics and requiring it to be more than just one course throughout your educational career, people would understand that. And they would also have an opportunity to experience it. With civics, with just a textbook is forgotten quickly. Civics with experiential opportunity, where you can go out and see a county commission operating, or go work for an intern with a representative, or just go get engaged in your community, is the experience that helps you understand why civics is so important. And it's more than just a box you check to say, this is why I can get a degree.
Right. And civics is so important because our life, our freedoms are important. And you don't have one without the other. If you don't have the knowledge of civics and what it is, then you're not going to be participating, and you are going to be run by a bunch of corporations or a bunch of oligarchs or a bunch of whoever, because it's kind of like taking the word constitutional republic out, the words out, and putting in democracy. So, okay, on another, just to continue our education here, for again, this is for the grassroots. We're bringing them up. I want to educate them so they understand all this, so they can have collectively a more powerful voice in our legislation. Because I don't think a lot of people realize, a lot of people have thrown their hands up. I don't think they realize there's millions of us and there's only thousands of them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But how many of us actually vote? Let's just take the city of Lakeland, since we're both familiar with that. You know, in the last general election they had in November, there was less than 19% of the registered voters turning out.
I think the mayor won by, like, she had a total of 6,000 votes.
Yeah,
It's terrible.
well, it's. But you have 100% of the people complaining or expressing their opinion,
Right.
and I think that's where voting is just one aspect of being a good citizen, but it's a required and necessary aspect of being a good citizen. And as a former elected official, I will tell you, the fewer people that vote, the better off I am. Because I know who votes, where they vote, and the outcomes of where they vote. So I can target that precinct and that person with a message that's going to convince them to want to vote for me. Don't expand my base so I have to spend more money and have to moderate my message in order to accommodate all the increase of people that are voting. I want fewer people to vote. And so it's really interesting that when we see people say, well, I can't make a decision between these two or these three or whatever. Do you realize you're empowering those who vote by not voting? That your no vote is essentially making their vote more important? And more importantly than that, in today's world with the information age at your fingertips, you don't have the desire to go do some research on the issues and the individuals that are running. That's a sad commentary. Again, if we were teaching civics, again, if we were offering people an opportunity to become engaged in the community level, because that's where it all starts, you would see, I think, a greater turnout of voters. And the one thing, we talk about the extremism and the divisiveness in our nation right now. Imagine that instead of having, a 45% turnout on a national level, that we had an 80% turnout on a national level. Everybody who's running for office would have to moderate their message. You wouldn't be playing to the extreme on one side or the other. You would actually have to be playing to the middle because you got more people voting. The fastest registration in the state of Florida is the non-party affiliates. They make up nearly 1/3 of the voters.
Right. And Florida's not an open voting state.
No, and that's I think that's a problem.
Yeah, well, because I lived in Minnesota for 24 years, and Minnesota's open voting, so you could vote for whoever you wanted without changing party affiliations, whereas here you can't.
Right. There is an issue about, and this debate will go on, but there is a way to make it, I believe, so that you could have closed voting, but have it you could change your affiliation within 60 days of the election instead of having to change it within, a year or whatever. The parties are trying to become more powerful themselves, of course, because they want to perpetuate themselves and be in control.
Right.
But it makes it harder for grassroots people to do that, to get involved.
It really does. And it also, and another thing is I encourage people, the grassroots, find a candidate that you like and support them. You need to support them. You need to go out and door knock for them. You need to support them financially, even if it's $5, $10, however many dollars. You need to support them because that really matters. It's because they're up against, you're up against the good old boys. You're up against the PACs. You're up against a lot of targeted.
Absolutely.
And it's really very difficult. When I ran here for public office, one of the things that I'm pretty proud of is I split the good old boy PAC. And it's like, you know what? Yay me. I didn't win the office. However, I won in a lot of other ways in that I got discussion opened and I educated a lot of people on a lot of things, and they had to address all the issues I brought up.
And you
so I
worked
think
very
that
hard.
more and more people should run, because if you have an issue you want brought up and you bring it up as you're running for whatever office it is, it has to be addressed.
I agree.
So.
And people have to understand, if they don't want to take an interest in government, beware, because government will take an interest in you.
All right. So what we're going to talk about now is the structure of government, in that there's federalism, which is dividing power between federal, state, and local governments. But there's also the three branches of government. So if you could lead us through the three branches of government, federalism, and how all that is connected and why it is so vitally important.
Absolutely. Our founders designed a system of government that had checks and balances, as we talked about before. They created Congress, they created the president, they created judiciary. Those three branches, the executive, the legislative, and judiciary, make up the process by which we create laws for which we could be governed. What was interesting, though, is that when they created this, there were those that wanted to have more rights reserved to the states. But there was also the group that was pushing for the Constitution, the Federalists, and in fact, the Federalist Papers came out in support of adoption of the Constitution, were wanting to control in the central government, the federal government, the people's lives. And in order to reach a compromise there, in the first Congress that was held right after the adoption of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights was offered, the first 10 amendments. And those 10 amendments enumerated specifically what rights are given to individuals, period. You know, the right of free speech, the right of religion, the right of to not have unlawful search and seizure, the freedom to
Privacy.
assemble, privacy. These rights were given, but what was interesting is the 10th Amendment preserved that those rights not herein enumerated by the Constitution are reserved to the states. And that has given a great deal of effort to wanting to preserve states' rights. And that came out in the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade, where the Supreme Court came out and said, hey, there's nothing in the Constitution that requires the federal government to regulate abortion. We say that since it's not there, it's up to the states to regulate abortion. They didn't outlaw abortion, as the left says. No, what they did is they said there's nothing in the Constitution that gives a right to abortion, and therefore, if it was going to be regulated, then it shall be regulated by the states. And that's what happened there. That's a states' right versus a federalism issue. And now you've got, well, where does my county government, do they get their power from the federal government? No. Once a state is recognized by Congress, then they are endowed with certain powers under the Constitution, and they can delegate those powers, which they do through legislation, through a state constitution, to a county government, who then can authorize and give power to local governments, city governments. All that is controlled by the state. And at the top, you've got the federal preemption, you've got the state governments, and then you've got the local governments. But what's interesting about this whole system of the tiers of government that you have, the most impactful, the one that affects your life more than anything, is the local government. It's the most taxing, the most regulating. You don't believe me? Look to see where you're living next to. Look to see what they're trying to put in next to you. Look to see how much they're taxing you. Look to see what they're doing with your animal control, what they're doing with your trash, your sewer, your water. I mean, the local control, I guarantee you, is more impactful than anything done at the state level and definitely at the federal level.
And a lot of people have no idea what is being done at a local level. It's very difficult to find out. I mean, even in Lakeland, it's very difficult to find out all the different little secret deals that are going, all the things that are coming down the pipeline. It's very difficult to find out. They should be publishing somewhere live our budget, the deals that are made, all the different things. That was one of the things I stood on. I think the city of Lakeland spends too much money. There's a lot that I don't agree with. I don't agree with a lot of the public-private partnerships. I think, for instance, especially now, people are hurting. We need our taxes lowered. I think that we're spending way too much money on several different, in essence, pet projects. I don't think the city of Lakeland should continue supporting the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, it doesn't benefit all of Lakeland residents. It's very centralized in a local area. And after so many years, it's kind of like, okay, done. And if you do want to have any kind of public-private partnership, it should have limits on it. Okay, we'll help you out for a couple years. But it should also be something that people vote on.
I agree. But one of the things that has really led to this, though, is the erosion of local media. Local media used to be the investigative reporters that would always report on what's going on at City Commission, what's going on at the Planning and Zoning, what's going on at the Code Enforcement hearing, everything. With the erosion of local press, the local media, there's less accountability. And that's why you don't see a lot of things being published. That's why you don't see investigative reporters out there anymore. We don't have them. All the focus is on national news.
Oh, you're so right. You're so spot on. Okay, people, we need the local citizen journalists out there. You're right.
Yes, we do.
You're absolutely right about that. We need that in a big way. Okay, so the three branches, legislative, executive, and judicial. Explain what each one does and how it's made into checks and balances there, or should be into checks and balances.
Yeah, nothing can really generate itself as a law, a statute, absent the legislature passing it and the president signing it into law. Now, the president does issue, and every president's done this and done it a multitude of times, is execute executive orders. And an executive order, unbeknownst to a lot of people, cannot create new law. It can only interpret the existing law. And so, for example, when Biden decided to eliminate the student loan debt for certain people, he did it through an executive order. The Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. That's creating a new law, and that's not within the authority that you have. Almost every executive order will be challenged in the courts, and the courts, doing their job, as they should, is to review this to see if it's appropriate to have this executive order and it doesn't create new law or defy people of certain rights. And what's interesting about these executive orders is that they can be removed by the next president. They're not binding like a statute is. And then the other part of this that's really been very unfortunate in our country is the delegation of power to bureaucracies. The power that goes to administrative agencies, whether it be the EPA, the Department of Defense, the Department of Education, the Department of Energy, they have been authorized by Congress to do certain regulatory rules that allow them to control things in our life that we don't see happen in the sunshine, that are done by unelected bureaucrats that we don't know who they are. I mean, we can find out who they are by just doing some research, but they essentially make laws through what are called administrative rules and then published in the Code of Federal Regulations, which is probably 10 times more voluminous than the United States statutes. And that's what has impacted our lives probably more than anything, is that the bureaucracy...
Now, are those unconstitutional?
Well, they have never been ruled that, but it's a delegation of the Congress can do what Congress wants to do with its powers, and it has delegated those powers to the bureaucracy. Now, there is a form of due process under the bureaucracy. It's called the Administrative Procedures Act that gives somebody, if they've been affected by a regulatory rule, to appeal it, to challenge it in the administrative procedure courts through an administrative law judge. Once that's done, and they don't like the outcome, then they can bring suit in the the regular judiciary. And that's why I don't think it would ever be deemed unconstitutional, because you can continue your due process rights all the way through to the Supreme Court, even though you have to start through another tier of administrative courts before you can actually get into the federal courts.
How long do you think it would be, if it would even be possible, because with a lot of those, a lot of it's about funding. If you take away the funding, because we keep seemingly, I mean, our debt is astronomical. And if we start taking away the funding or trimming back the funding on these,
in theory, you are absolutely, in theory, that is absolutely correct. But the last time Congress passed a budget, Bill Clinton was president.
Oh,
okay?
Isn't that terrible?
All we've been doing is passing continuing resolutions that continue to fund the government. Which is absurd.
That's unconstitutional.
Well, I mean, it's
don't they have to, is it Constitution, don't they have to pass a budget?
They have to fund the government, and that's the quandary. We have not seen a budget. I mean, the House will pass their 13 budgets for all 13 agencies, and then they'll die. The Senate won't take them up, or the only thing we ever pass is the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. We might do an ag bill, but we do that probably every 10 years. Otherwise, all we do is continue to fund at the same levels. Now, when you continue to fund at the same levels, you're empowering all those agencies out there that have been making rules and laws forever to continue to do so. Yes, and that's why people don't understand that if you read it in the book, this is how government should operate. Let me just put it this way. If you were running a household, if you were running a business, logic and reason would be your compass in order to get to where you want to get, to be productive, to be successful. Government doesn't follow logic and reason. They are a reactive form of government. They're not proactive. And it didn't always used to be that way. I would love to see the government have to be required to do a 2-year budget. Imagine if they had to actually do a budget funding for 2 years in advance. How much focus could be done on other issues?
Right. That would be great. That's it. And again, this is what we're trying to do, or what I'm trying to do with Floridian Future, is educate the people to raise them up so that we can hold our elected officials responsible and let our voices be heard. Because the more, I mean, this is like, it's kind of like, oh, feeling of, oh, I can't do anything. You can do something.
Yes,
you
you
have
can.
to keep out there.
Let me give you another example. Government, the way they do their budgeting, which is their appropriations, is they use incremental budgeting. In other words, what did you spend last year? If you didn't spend it all, then we're not going to give you that much this next time. Oh, you spent your whole budget? Then we'll give you an increment 5% more. And every year it's added on 5%. So the incentive is spend everything you got. Otherwise, they're going to cut us. My bill that I filed 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and others have filed one similar, but you never get any hearing, is called a zero-based budgeting bill. It says that every agency starts off with zero, and they have to come in and give us their constitutional basis, their statutory basis for their request for an appropriation, and then give us 3 different budgets of how you're going to spend this, and Congress will choose from amongst those 3. So every budget year you start off at 0 instead of $1 billion where we were last year. That just makes sense. It's the way you budget at home. It's the way you budget in your business, but it's not the way you budget in Congress.
That's brilliant. I love that. Let's do it.
If we had enough people behind it and demanding it, it could be done. If we had a constitutional amendment saying that, we could do it.
What about, because I know that DeSantis has been bringing down Florida's debt. I mean, they have to go a special session now to, do the budget.
Well, Florida has a constitutional requirement that they balance the budget. The United States Constitution does not require that, and we've tried that many times. It has never happened. Again, remember, a constitutional amendment has to be ratified by 3/5 of the states. So this is a long process. It could take 2 years, 3 years. So I would love to see us have a balanced budget amendment. That would mean that we would have to set aside some monies for debt reduction. All we do is pay interest. The federal government only pays interest. They don't pay, and that's $1 trillion a year. It's probably going to be more than that. It's the largest expense we have. And yet we still continue to perpetuate the amount of principal we have, never chipping away at that. And unless we do something to get our debt under control, which we're close to $40 trillion.
That's insane.
16 years ago, it was $12 trillion. We have never seen anything this, without any regard for financial or fiscal responsibility. This is going to hurt us, especially with China wanting to be the next superpower by 2050. I mean,
it's already hurting us.
Yes.
It's hurting us a lot. Okay, so political mechanics. Can you explain to us about lobbyists and PACs and what party leadership actually does?
Yes. First of all, lobbyists are not bad. There are bad lobbyists. There are bad lawyers. There are bad doctors. There are bad plumbers. There are bad all kinds of things. Lobbyists, as I can tell you, as somebody who was in the elected process and I had a good staff, there's only so much you know or could know. You've got to rely on people whose livelihoods depend on the work that you're doing. So there are people that, your legislation will affect banking. Your legislation will affect agriculture. Your legislation will affect water quality. You've got to bring experts to the table who know what to do. And lobbyists are essentially those people. They come to you. Do they get involved in the political process? Of course. Why? Because they want access. They want to have access to you to be able to tell you. Now, I've had over my career a few lobbyists who did not follow through, and I never dealt with them again, and they're not around anymore. So their jobs depend on doing the best they can to provide the most honest, transparent form of information disclosure that they possibly can. Now, there are those that just do fundraising, but there are those that effectuate policy, and those are the ones that you want to deal with. Fundraising you're going to deal with anyway because you're going to have to raise money, which is where PACs come into thing. What are PACs? Political action committees. Political action committees are these entities that are not human beings, that are a corporation, that now have been given, because of Citizens United case, the same rights and privileges of an individual, which means they have the right of free speech, which means that if you put $20 million in a PAC, they can come out and advocate for a candidate or advocate for an issue without having to do anything for campaign finance reform, because they're not giving it to you. They're just expressing their right of free speech. Vote for this person because they'd be good. You can't coordinate with them, or you're not supposed to. And PACs, what really has gotten out of control is that PACs are now being started by members of the legislature. I can tell you without a doubt, probably the majority of members of the legislature, I would say a vast majority, this is the legislature. They're paid $29,000 a year, have PACs with over $1 million in it. That they go out
and the Florida state legislature.
In the Florida state legislature, they have PACs. I know of some that have been term limited out that still have millions of dollars in a PAC. What do they do with it? Maybe they want to be a kingmaker or a queen maker, and influence other people with candidates with it. But the PACs have really taken a lot of control over, because you need the money. Free speech is great, but it's not free if you want to get your message out. You got to be able to pay the media, target the message, and have a successful message. So it does take dollars. And I will tell you the way these work. You can give your money to the party, and then the party can spend it however they want and supporting whoever they want. One of the things I'll tell you, when I was and both sides do it, the Republicans and Democrats do it. If you want to serve on an A committee, which I did, I served on financial services. I had to raise $450,000 every 2 years for the party to be on that committee.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean that's just the way. That's just the price of being able to do that. Now, is it hard to do? Well, they have great resources for you. You travel around the country to raise that kind of money, but you want to be effective for your constituency. So if you want those positions, you got to go out and do what you got to do.
It's kind of a double-edged sword, because you're out there trying to raise money and doing all this stuff, as opposed to just focusing and doing on what's right for your constituents and focusing on your job. All of a sudden, now you're a fundraiser in addition to trying to do your job.
But again, if I've got fewer constituents that are really going to get interested in what I'm doing, then that's okay with me. Right. And I know that people aren't going to go out and vote. Of all the people that are eligible to register to vote, probably 50% ever register to vote. And of those that are registered to vote, probably 50% ever vote. So you're looking at 25% of the people that are eligible to register to vote that are making all the decisions about who gets elected.
Right. And I think in Lakeland, it was more like 16% voted.
Yes.
Of registered voters.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez won with, I want to say, 16% of the registered voters turning out in her election. She won. She garnered a little over 13,000 votes and became a member of Congress and changed the entire message of the Democratic Party.
That's just crazy. So
you can make a difference. You can make a difference. And you
tell us where ordinary citizens can actually make an impact.
Well, locally, of course, by getting engaged, as you have done, in local elections, local government. I think we need to take our parties back. When I was chair of the county party back in 92 to 95, we were a lot more diverse. We didn't get engaged in primaries, but we got engaged in the community. We would do events that involved charities. We showed people that being a Republican wasn't just being political; it was being a good citizen. And I think you build that, then more people are wanting to be inclined to want to vote your way, or at least be part of your party. But recruiting good candidates is going to be essential. And recruiting good candidates means that we do it from the bottom up, not from the top down. And that way we do it in communities. And we should be building leaders in our communities, starting in K through 12, and recognizing them as we do in athletes, as we do in arts, as we do in music and everything else. We need to be recognizing young leaders for their ability to go out and do things, to effectuate the change. Maybe they went out and cleaned up a park, or did something, or found an issue that changed things in the community. We need to be encouraging them, because how else are we going to get leaders? Right. We the people need to have good leaders, because we're going to have somebody up there. Our system demands it.
Right, and you're so right about that, because it used to be. I used to be more involved with the Republican Party because we did things. And now it's like, okay, well, let's get together once a month and have lunch. And, aren't we, and working for candidates or working for elections, it is so difficult to find volunteers to actually do something. to actually do something. It's like even letter writing, even answering phones, even, there's so many things but it's more about getting involved with your community. I absolutely believe that you have to get involved with your community, find people and support them, and join, we need to build a community. We need to
Absolutely.
take care of each other because our government is not going to be taking care of us.
Our,
We
our,
need to
our,
build a community.
the resolution or the solution to our divisiveness isn't going to come from Congress or from the legislature. It's going to come from the communities. And communities have to lead by example. And they need to bring people together. And I'm not saying to throw away the party. I'm conservative. I'm always going to be conservative, but I'm going to be an open-minded conservative. If you can change my mind, all the better. But you know what I know? That despite me being conservative and somebody else being liberal, I know that probably 70% of the issues we will agree on. But we'll never touch them because we're divided by one or two issues, and therefore we have taken our sides and we can't associate with each other. And that to
And I
me is
think that
appalling. It's juvenile.
it's
And
very
inappropriate.
juvenile, but I think that's what the media and the game plan was to hold the citizenry down, is to divide and conquer and make it where it's like, oh, well, they don't like this. Okay, I hate them. And I relate this to two things. One, if I love sushi and you hate sushi, let's just not go to a sushi restaurant together.
Very well put. It's a good. Yes.
And the other thing is, like up in Minnesota, it's Viking and Packers. I mean,
Yeah.
game day, Viking fans and Packer fans are like, "Arr!" And then after the game's over, you go have a beer. It's a,
Yes.
it's the same thing. It's the same thing. We don't have to be at each other's throats and, oh, I hate you because of this. No, not at all. Because there's a lot of things. It's like no matter if somebody's liberal or conservative, bottom line, you know what? People still want to feed their families. They still
Yes.
want to take care of their kids. They still care about so many other things. People still want clean drinking water. People still want good food, healthy food. You want options. So we
Yes.
have a lot more in common than we do differences.
Well put. Well put.
So
And that we need to raise that awareness.
all right.
We need
So
to bring
for our
people
little
together.
takeaway for our first session here, I plan on, if you're up for it, to have this as a continuing series here to just help people engage more, help people understand more. I can have where people can write in questions and things like that, and have good, simple, honest discussion. There's no stupid questions. There's no
I agree.
judgment. There's no it's just, if you want to know, just ask, because I don't know a lot. I didn't know a lot. I'm one of those, though, it's kind of like, okay, I'll step out and I'll try this. To run for an office, I highly recommend everybody do it, because
Amen.
you will learn. Yeah, I think everybody should. People that are out there complaining about all different kinds of things, I look at them and I go, why don't you run? Why don't you run? Whatever you bring up, they have to address it. Why don't you run? It's not easy, and you'll learn a lot about yourself. You'll also find a lot of support in surprising places,
Yes, you will.
which is really
You'll be
good.
surprised at some that don't support you that you thought would, but it is also self-revealing. And having lost a race myself, it was one of the best things that happened to me, even though at the time I thought it was awful. It helped me do very well from there on out. It helped crystallize in me what was passionate to me and why I was running. And that's, it's okay to lose. I would rather live with the regret of losing than have not run at all. And that's where you got to come to terms with it.
Well, that's like, even for me, when I ran against an incumbent who was very, very
Yep.
popular. And the interesting
So did
thing
I.
is I actually got more votes combined than anyone that's ever run against an incumbent. However, I also got rid of BLM in Lakeland.
Yeah.
I educated people between the difference between a Marxist agenda and a constitutional agenda. And like I say, I split the good old boy pack. And if it hadn't been for me running, I wouldn't have met the wonderful, wonderful people that I've met. And it's really opened a lot of doors for me in a lot of ways. And it's like, all right, I can do this. I can get out there and do this. So truly, truly, anyone can. We are a citizen-run, or should be a citizen-run government. The citizens need to stand up and take that step.
Absolutely. Well put.
So, all right, on that note, if there's anything, if you remember 3 things about, or you want to just put out there 3 things you want people to remember from this discussion, and there will be more discussions, what would it be? Your 3 takeaways.
One, learn your Constitution. Learn the formation of this government, and become knowledgeable about that. 2, understand that each individual does make a difference, and that is so important. And I'll tell you the story one day about the 27th Amendment, how that was passed, which is a fascinating story. But it was because of one person that did that, who was a student in 1982, that single-handedly got it passed in 1992. And thirdly, get engaged at any level. Get engaged, even if it means going outside of your yard and picking up trash in other people's yard. Go ahead and do that. Why? Because that's part of your citizenship, and take ownership of that citizenship. And you will be an example and a model of what you want to see other people to be like, to be a good nation.
Amen. Dennis, thank you so very, very much. I
Thank you.
greatly appreciate this, and we'll do it again.
Look forward to it. Thanks very much. Have a great day.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.